For me, housing is a basic need, and I think everyone deserves a roof on their head. So the question is, can I leave this world and on my deathbed know that there has been legislation, that the rules of the game? Number two, that this company has built houses and also looked after the tenants and the landlords that we have today. And they're all saying, this is a good job. So my name is Vincent Agaba. I serve as the managing director, and I've been doing this for 18 years in Avarts. I also serve as the past president of the Association of Real Estate Agents of Uganda, the chairperson, governing council for the Real Estate Institute of East Africa, and also president of the Africa Real Estate Practitioners Alliance based in Ghana. But I also serve at Housing Finance Bank as a non-executive director, and also on the board of Habitat for Humanity, which is also in the building of houses space for the less privileged. Back in time, 2006, that is when Avarts Housing Limited was born as a company in real estate industry. I think there is a journey, there is a story behind it, because when I was at Uganda Matters University and I leave the university, I come to Kampala. I remember taking a taxi up to Bakuli, and the idea was to look for a house as a young student graduating, coming to the industry. And one of those things which was very important is to find shelter, to find a room where you can start from in Kampala, not going back to Fort Portal. So when I reach Bakuli and people say, you know what, if you are looking for a house in this area, there are these guys who stand at the border stage, and those people know where all the houses are. So I reach at the border stage. I ask this gentleman, I have about 150,000 shillings for rent per month. They say, oh, we have all the houses. We can show you, but today, since you have just come, it's better to come back next weekend when we have all options for you. So, oh, that's fine. So I take a taxi back to Piggy, that's Uganda Matters University, and the next weekend come back to see the houses. So one of the challenges I can assure you is that when I come back, they say, yes, we have gotten about 5 options. So the first house which we saw was about 350. So my question was, but I said 150. This house is 350. Oh, no. Sorry. Let's go to the next. We reached the next. It was already rented a day before. We moved to the third, it is also about 250. So I asked them, but now today we have done all this, but there's nothing about 150. They said, no, okay, fine. We know other options. Of course, to start calling other friends and so forth. Next weekend, if you come back, then probably we shall have gotten exactly what fits in your budget. But when we go back to the stage, they say we need to pay facilitation fee because they showed me some places they had to burn fuel. So I asked them, but what am I paying for? So you pay 20,000 or something like that. So that went on and on for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So that story, I can assure you, kept in my mind running. I said, if this could happen to me, a graduate from the university, used to Kampala, always coming in and out, what about my mother if it landed into the same hands? And that became a very big concern for me. And actually, let me tell you the truth, the idea there was like, these people are very important in the value chain. But what it probably seems to be going wrong is the idea that they are not either listening very carefully to the client, or they are not transparent to ensure that the client gets what he wants. So my thinking was, probably there is a need for a housing information center in my mind. So when I go for my second degree to the Netherlands, that thing kept happening into my head. So I asked the professor, what is this? How do you find houses in the Netherlands? The gentleman told me, if you go into people's houses here, you'll be arrested. There are offices called real estate. You go there, you tell them what you want, they will line up all the options, they will make an appointment with you, you will meet at those houses. The chances is 90% you will find what you need. I said, this is interesting. So what I did, I said, okay, fine. How do I get to know? So the professor, I think, had a brother-in-law, said, you know what, if you are willing, instead of in the weekend wasting your time going somewhere, you can always go to this office and check. So I took a train, I would be there once in a weekend and so forth. To be honest, it was a full-fledged office with people working, with computers. I was like, what? So that thing kept moving around. So I said at the beginning or at the end of the university, I'll pack my rucksack and go back to Uganda. And when I came back, that was the first thing to do. So I became a broker. I became an agent. So I was here, Vincent Agaba, with my 2 degrees, also the broker. Started in the Kamocha there with the business. And the problem were the challenges: no office, no rent, no internet, no cartridge to print proposals. It was a challenge. So what I would do is that I would just carry my phone, which was a fixed line MTN, in my rucksack, in a taxi. And when it would ring, people would laugh in the taxi. I would say, Avarts Housing Limited, good afternoon. And there were laughs. But the point was to coordinate in our business, because it was a phone business. So we also had to rent an office. But the first office now was my sitting room. So a 2-bed a house where I was staying, there was a bedroom and a sitting room. A sitting room was the office. From the sitting room to Kamocha, got an office. But there was a biggest challenge. In the whole sector, the challenge was, it was very hard to be able to commit landlords to give you the house as you to rent it out. They would tell about 10 brokers. So that's when we started thinking about property management, real estate management, because if we manage the building on behalf of the landlord, then that is whereby we are completely in charge of the building. So if I tell you the house is available, it is guaranteed that it's available. So we kind of grew into property management, real estate management. And I can assure you today, if someone walks into Avarts Housing Limited office and we tell you that there is an apartment for rent and you are interested in it, even if another client comes, we shall endeavor to call you before and say, there's another person interested. If you're still interested, please commit before the other person, to avoid the same situation that happened. So with property management now, with about 500 plus tenants in buildings, about 80 contracts in terms of landlords, that problem has slowly by slowly gotten solved. But that is now Avarts today. But of course, when we were moving along, and we said, look, these buildings, because there were tenant-landlord complaints about repairs and maintenance. A tenant has rented a house, the roof is leaking, the landlord is not available. Or the tenant is complaining about the power which is not working, or this and that, the landlord either is not available, is busy. So we said what we need to do also, let's work with insurance. So we worked with Sanlam Insurance to say, look, if the major part of the building is insured, then the landlord does not always have to look for money by himself in order to do these repairs. The insurance can kick in. So that's how we ended up introducing corporate insurance agency to the business also. But again, when we were looking around, and we said, okay, fine. The issue is not about only housing. It is also on availability and variety of housing in terms of supply. So there is a lot of demand for housing, but there is a little supply. So that's why you see the prices keeps going up, because more people want houses, the houses are few. So we said, now how do we do this? We need to advise finance-wise. How do people get mortgages? How do people get construction finance in order to build more houses, so that the more the supply, the less the demand, and therefore the lower the price. So usually that's what happens in economics. So now we are working on the projects of thinking about how can we be part of building houses to rent, because we understand that there is a huge demand between 500,000, even below, about 300,000 shillings rent per month, up to 1.5 million shillings per month. That is where Ugandans are actually able to play around. The houses of $1,000, this and that, that's expatriate market, corporate market, high end. But the majority of middle income, lower people living in university, trying to find their first room to stay, it's just between 300, 250, up to about 1.5. So the company today, what we're thinking about is how can we build buildings for rent and position them alongside the rural areas of the city, where there is accessibility to transport, medical services, schools, and so forth, so that people are able to live in decent homes, but also able to access their places of work without going through much traffic jam and so forth. So that is now our future. But to be honest, it has been a challenge. It has been a tight race, because when you're doing all that, you're also focusing on building a company. So when we realized that Avarts model would be able to contribute to the solution, so we started the Association of Real Estate Agents of Uganda. And that is the association where I was the first president. And the idea was, one, let us promote education in real estate industry. We went to Makerere University Business School, and we started the bachelor's degree in real estate management. Since 2007, that program has been running. Now we have professionals who are qualified in real estate management, in addition to land economics that was existing before. We moved to Uganda Matters University and also did the same. Then we started the Real Estate Institute of East Africa, which is an industrial institute. And the idea is this is equivalent to LODC, the Law Development Center, that if you do any other course and you want to go into the real estate sector, you can do a foundation stage in real estate, you can do courses and come into the sector. So those platforms are there. And with the association, the other one was, of course, lobby and advocacy. What are the laws that can make our work better? So you know, all of us, we have the Landlord-Tenant Act. We made sure that we participate in that. There was a housing policy. We participated in that with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. We worked on, for example, the Mortgage Act that time. We were involved as part of the industry. So the Condominium Act, we have been actually advocating for that, because the times for the country to build houses on a half an acre, that luxury is going, because the land is not increasing. The population is expanding. So we need to do vertical construction, and that's why the Condominium Act is very important. Our dream is that if I'm trained in Uganda as a real estate agent or manager, I should be able to practice in Tanzania, I should be able to practice in DRC, I should be able to practice in Congo. So in April last year, we formed the Africa Real Estate Practitioners Alliance, now based in Ghana. And the idea is, how do we dig into the African Union and also the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement to ensure there is a movement of these professionals across the continent. That if I'm in Uganda and I have a client who is interested in the real estate in Nigeria, I should be able to call a colleague in Nigeria, and the colleague in Nigeria handles that client. And across the continent, we have the same challenges of housing. From South Africa to Libya, from Gabon to the coast, Indian coast, we have the same issues. So that conversation of harmonization, of legislation, of education across the continent, because all of us, we know that housing is a basic right. And it's a need, a basic need for everyone else. And we must hold it on with strength. Because for me, housing, why it's important is that it has a multiplier effect. If you have a good home, it means the children in that good home are likely to be educated. Why? Because they have a decent environment to do their homework. There are communicable diseases. For example, issues of malaria. If you have a house which is well ventilated, the issues of malaria, those will be limited. The issues of security. If people are sleeping in a good environment and protected, and also you have nice aligned streets and so forth, security we don't mean in terms only of rebels and so forth, but there is insecurity of fire. That if, for example, fire broke up in Katanga, how do you pass a fire brigade to defuse that fire? Before you move, this truck cannot reach certain houses. So aligning housing to the point that actually they can be reached, it's important. The other issue is the issue of sanitation and garbage collection. These are all issues to do with housing, because where there is urbanization, where there is a densification of people, there's likely to be garbage, there's likely to be drainage issues, there's likely to be all these kind of things. Now, when you solve housing and align it properly, you have touched all these issues. The issues of actual infrastructure, the road networks. We know from the professional point of view that 60% of all infrastructure around roads rotates around the neighborhoods. It's only about 40% that the road connects from here to Gulu and goes from here to Mbarara. The rest of the roads, they go through Chiwatule and Nansana, that rotation around. If you combine those roads, they form 60%. So when we build good houses, it means we are trying to address housing. What sets Avarts housing apart? It's our history. I told you the journey we have moved from that history of having faced the challenge and trying to solve that challenge that should not happen to someone else. So the values of integrity, the values of transparency, the values of customer focused, those values here work a lot. Because we don't want anything to happen like what happened to me in Bakuli. So for us, that's very critical. So the issue of unreliability in the market, the issue of showing people houses that do not exist or do not match their budgets, at Avarts, that does not happen. And that sets us apart. The other thing which we have employed technically here is ensuring that we are adopting slowly by slowly to corporate governance principles. We must have audited books of accounts, we must pay trading license, we must pay taxes, we must make sure that we run the business as how it's supposed to be run. Now, when you do that, what it helps us with is you have become accountable to yourself as an organization, as a company. That self-accountability helps in terms of setting you apart, because there are many businesses that you would find the decisions of how money should be spent and who should spend it is all centralized to one person. At Avarts Housing, does not happen. Now, we have gone ahead to integrate technology into our operations. So recently, we also have what we call a property management software. We've been running QuickBooks and all our tally systems for all the accounting department and finance. Those technologies help us to be efficient, helps us to be very much transparent, and that helps us to offer actually what we call a professional service. In the area of affordable housing, our future as Avarts Housing Limited, we know now for 18 years where the demand is, and we think that we are going to adopt the ESG, the environment, social and governance principle in our company. So how do we build houses, affordable houses, 1-bedroom self-contained apartments or 1 bedroom and a half? Because we also know that our society has what we call maids or house help. They like to sleep in the same house with the superiors. But the point is they don't want to stay them in the same space. So 1 bedroom self-contained and a half for the house help. So the house help also lives in a good life. 2 bedroom and a half self-contained. That is going to be our space of play. Because we know that when a person leaves university, they need a 1 bedroom and a half probably. They can stay in that unit when they get their spouse. They can have their first child in the same unit, graduate to a 2 bedroom and a half, and probably after that they are thinking of building their own. That's where we see the challenges, and that's where we are going in the area of affordable housing. But integrate it with the issues of solar energy to have clean energy. Integrate it with, for example, water harvesting. People should not be washing cars with the National Water and Sewerage Corporation water. That should be water from the roof. And the issues of greening around those environments. Let's have a plot of land. It should have some plants, should have some trees. What has been harvested. Even when we want to work with architects to design houses which are open house. Wide windows and so forth, so that light, you don't have to switch on power during the day, because affordability of a house is not only the price of the house. It's also the price of water you pay per month. It's also the amount of money you pay for power per month. It's also about all these things, garbage collection and etc. So if we play around with all that, we are likely to lower the cost of the housing for the Ugandans and Africans at large. Now, I will not call it advice, but maybe tips for those who want to join the sector. The first thing is to love it. The second one is to identify a gap, a challenge that we want to solve. Because to me, the point is, even if it is agriculture or it is about ICT and all that, we should enter a business when we want to solve something. Now, when we know what we challenge we want to solve, that will make us stick into that business, whether come rain or shine. 2 is, for me, persistence. Things are not easy, but the question is, where are the things easy? Number 3 for me is financial discipline. Financial discipline. Every little we make, how do we spend it at the end of the day? For me, housing is a basic need, and I think everyone deserves a roof on their head.